Hello and welcome back to Canadian Boxing Hub. Today I'm jumping on to preview firstly the matchup coming up of Barriere in Madison Square Garden, I think at the theater, taking on Hines on the George Kambosos and Hitchens undercard. That'll be a fun fight and a good indicator of where he's going under Matchroom's promotion as well today. Just want to get into some of the implications from some of the fights we've seen, some of the fights that are imminently planned, and just talk about a couple of fights that I would like to see. I think that would be good matchups next for guys, and some of these rankings that we're seeing, because boxrec is pretty unbelievable. As usual, guys, like, subscribe, share this around, goes a long way, and we'll try to do more and more videos if we can get that subscriber count up. So Barriere, he'll be fighting Ronnie Hines, an American southpaw, 6'6". Barriere himself, it says 6'4" here, but he seems bigger than that when you see him beside guys. There's a lot of photos of Barriere beside Tyson Fury, and if we can believe that Tyson Fury is anywhere close to 6'9", Barriere's more than 6'4", but nonetheless, he's a big guy. He typically weighs in at a very, very lean, about 239, 240 pounds. Ronnie Hines, another big guy, 6'6", also a southpaw. Will be a good fight. Matchroom, I think, doing some careful matchmaking. Obviously, this is kind of their first fight with Barriere, really under their banner and on one of their bigger cards, and they'll be looking to showcase him on something that'll have a lot of eyeballs on it, especially with the American audience and some of those good scraps there on that fight card. So excited to see, and I have to predict that Hines is seen as the opponent in this one. It's careful matchmaking. I think he's going to give Barriere yet another good look. I think in the kind of test fight that Matchroom had with Barriere against Eligor last time, I think they carefully chose that opponent to give a different look from what he'd had thus far. They signed him after that, and now they're matching him up against Hines, and I think it's to give him another look. They're clearly moving him towards some, area belts or low-level belts. So it'll be interesting to watch the journey. I do see him winning a comfortable points decision or a late stoppage in this one, but will be good to see how he looks. Another camp with Sugar Hill, and I'm sure lots of great sparring, so will be interesting to see his development. Of course, we've just had in the weekend past Fabio Wardley pulling a rabbit out of a hat and knocking out Justice Huni. A lot of conversation about the stoppage itself. Of course, Huni getting up at around 9 or 10. It was a pretty quick count, I would say, but that's all in the referee's discretion. And even when Huni stood up, and it got waved off, there wasn't a ton of protest from him or his team. So I'd say all's well that ends well. It's really a shame. Huni was boxing unbelievably well, but that's heavyweight boxing, and I think Wardley is a bit of Deontay Wilder. I struggle to see him winning a world title, a full title, a real title. But, he's very entertaining for what he is. He's got the chin to stick around in fights and always give himself a chance with the power. So it'll be an interesting one. And, it's always great to have another guy. Like, if he loses that one, they're not going back to Portman Road anytime soon. He wins, there's a chance he gets another Portman Road, 20,000+ ticket selling night. That's another great undercard for guys in the area to be on. So you do want to see that continue. That being said, Justice Huni, I think, had the potential of doing the same thing in Australia. If he would have come through this one, he would be soon having that kind of Joe Parker effect down there with being a rising heavyweight prospect. So very interesting to see what comes of this, but I would love to see Fabio Wardley take a bit of a lateral move, maybe face someone like American Stephen Shaw, who's a similar guy who's, a little bit volatile, leaves himself open to some things, but can absolutely crack. I think that'd be a great fight. Maybe get Fabio Wardley fighting in the States, get away for one. But he's on track. He can fight. But I think he's a smart guy who's going to understand that he can't just jump back in with another boxer of the caliber of a Justice Huni. And really it kind of shows the levels even. Like Justice Huni outboxed Fabio Wardley far more than Fraser Clark ever did. I don't think that Justice Huni had the physicality of a Fraser Clark, and that was kind of the undoing here, as well as a lapse of kind of focus for a brief moment. But, Justice Huni, I'd love to see him back in with maybe a Fraser Clark. Two guys that have lost to Fabio Wardley recently in kind of stunning fashion. I think it would be a very good fight, rebuilding, and it's kind of a winner stays on type of fight. I would pick a Justice Huni to come through in one of those, but would be a very good fight for him in my opinion. And like I say, Fabio Wardley, maybe a Stephen Shaw. Of course, on the card, Dillian Whyte was moved off. I don't know if that was ever going to happen or if that was an effort to sell a couple more tickets, but I'll talk about that in a second. Nelson Hysa did feature on the card. Of course, he won by knockout against Patrick Corte in the second round. Wasn't going to ever go any other way. I would like to see Hysa, he's 40. They're going to try to leapfrog him now that they've gotten him a bit of exposure. I'd like to see him fight a Joe Joyce, a Filip Hrgovic, maybe a Frank Sanchez. Put him in with one of those other guys who has, good amateur pedigree, but is aged or, they're all similar guys that can all bang and take a good shot, but are on the older side and maybe a little shop-worn. So those are some of the fights I'd like to see for him. Now, Dillian Whyte, of course, was pulled off the card that I don't know if they ever really meant for him to end up fighting on, because he's supposed to be fighting, currently rumored, not verified, but sounds pretty likely he's going to be fighting Moses Itauma in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia on the 16th of August is what we're hearing. This is obviously Dillian Whyte to the slaughter for the name and reputation of Dillian Whyte. Dillian Whyte is way past his prime, and I don't think in his prime he could ever beat this version of a Moses Itauma. Dillian Whyte never had that absolute top-level boxing skill. Moses Itauma does. Dillian Whyte's always been a little bit chinny, and now he's aged and out of the ring more often than not. Injuries piling up. I think this one only ends one way, Itauma by early stoppage. But, it'll be a fun one, and I'm sure if they put that at the top of a bill or even as a co-main, we'll see other heavyweight fights on that card. So August 16th might be one to watch. Will be interesting to see what happens. Of course, Frank Warren has a huge heavyweight stable that needs to get out. So let me know what you guys think. Alexi Barriere versus Ronnie Hines coming up. A bit of a USA-Canada matchup there, which is always fun these days, of course. Then we've got the, kind of implications coming out of last weekend. And who do you think should be fighting who? Do you agree with some of my potential matchups for these guys, or am I all fucked up on it? Let me know. Subscribe, like, share, all that fun stuff, and I will talk to you guys again soon. Take care.